So, hiya, today's episode of Success Stories of People You Might Never Heard Of is with Karen Weir from Weir Business Insurance. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, I'm Karen Weir. I run Weir Insurance Brokers. Our head office is in Blyth in Northumberland, and we are a second generation general insurance brokers set up originally by my in-laws in 1972. So now we predominantly do business-to-business insurance across the North East region. We have about 4,000 customers and we sell over £6,000 worth of insurance each year, and we also have a funding company which turns over about 2.5 million as well. So that in a nutshell is us.
Good. Okay, insurance. Do you want to tell us how you got into it? I know you said you're second generation, but why insurance and why kind of kicking it on?
It's the $100 million question. I've only ever met, in 35 years of insurance, I've only ever met two people who actively decided to go into insurance as a career. Both of them did it because somebody in their family did it. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's an option that we choose.
To be honest, I've never seen a university course for it.
No.
Is that right?
So it's not, and I've done lots of school careers fairs and they just don't know where to put us.
Mm-hmm.
So my stall's always been put somewhere between social workers and the RAF,
Yeah.
and nobody really knows where we are. So I suppose really we're like business advisors, a bit like yourself. We will help businesses identify what risks they can insure against, and we'll give them advice on that. How did I get into it? Like everybody I speak to, apart from those two individuals, those two very special girls that I know, fell into it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the verb we use when it comes to insurance. We fall into it. And bizarrely, I was going to go into university to do hotel catering and institutional management, and during the summer holidays needed some cash, so applied to some of the insurance offices in Newcastle, and I never left.
Ah, okay. And so, following on from there then, how did you then get into Weir Insurance?
So I started working for Norwich Union, now known as Aviva, opposite Central Station on Westgate Road, way back in 1989, and I was there for a couple of years before I then started a new role with them down in Norwich. I used to commute every week from Norwich to Morpeth, which is 575 miles round trip. I remember it from my mileage forms. I did some training with them around the country, and eventually it was my heart that brought me back to the northeast.
Mm-hmm.
So my boyfriend at the time, now husband, we run the business together. We had a great life. We would go around the different towns and cities in the UK as I did my job, and he would join me at weekends. But eventually they made me based in Norwich and gave us a training centre, and so I didn't get to kind of tour the country anymore. And at that point I decided the travelling was enough. I think I'd written off 3 cars at that point with all the travelling. So I came back home, and at that point there really wasn't much of a presence for Norwich Union in Newcastle. So having done what I'd done, there wasn't really anything for me to come back to. There was an opportunity to join the family firm, if you like, and what made it really attractive proposition was the ability to make a difference in a small firm. So anybody who's worked for a large corporate knows, especially in learning and development in a large corporate, you sell the dream to the workers in that organisation and tell them how things are going to be, and then rarely does it happen that way. Whereas in a small firm of about 13 people at the time, if I show them how to use a new piece of software, it's like I've shown them how to make fire.
Mm-hmm.
So that was so rewarding.
Yeah, I bet. So your husband was parents were in insurance, you were insurance. So did he meet through insurance, or was it
Absolutely not.
coincidence?
Completely the other way around. I was waiting to go to university and chatting to him at the age of 18. He was at work and he was doing a quote on the old big huge computer screens that they had.
Okay.
And he said, well, if you want a job for the next 6 weeks before university, why don't you try an insurance company? So actually he is the reason that I got into insurance,
right,
and then
okay.
full circle, I came back again.
So you mentioned something about recruitment and being on these stalls, obviously putting the back in insurance. How do you find recruiting in insurance?
It's been a problem that has been coming down the road for a long time,
Yeah.
way before overall recruitment was going to be an issue. So back in 2008, I remember standing in the Constitutional Club in Newcastle on Pilgrim Street, right at the top, running a session for insurance brokers. We had about 30 insurance brokers in the room, and I was pushing for an apprenticeship scheme which had just been established in conjunction with the Chartered Insurance Institute, and I was trying to get all these employers in Newcastle to embrace apprenticeships in insurance, which some did, some didn't. That was then, and we could see this was an issue.
Yeah.
So it's not been a surprise. I think what's compounded the problem in our industry is that the rest of the world is having a recruitment problem too. So there's just nobody coming in.
Yeah.
That falling into insurance isn't happening quick enough.
Yeah. It's the same in this industry as well, in the accountancy industry. I think there's a massive shortage of people coming through. It's not like a sexy industry, unfortunately, so I don't think people kind of want to follow our footsteps much.
No, and I've got 3 children aged 24, 21 and 18, and I can't get any of them into the business. So if I can't get my own kids into the business, the challenge is how do I make it sexy enough for somebody else's kids to do it?
Yeah, but it's still a fantastic career.
Absolutely.
And that's it, you provide an excellent service.
Yeah.
So speaking of challenges, what challenges can you see, or what challenges do you have in your business at this moment in time?
One of the biggest challenges is recruitment, definitely attracting young people into the industry, getting them to just consider it as an industry. And I'm acutely aware that young people these days don't know what they want to do when they grow up. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but they don't know what they want to do, and I think we have to consider what young people want to do next.
Yeah.
So it falls to you and I to enlighten them what we do and hope that they choose to join us for however long they choose to join us before they try something else.
Yeah.
So I think recruitment is still a big challenge. As an industry, one of the biggest exposures we have is cyber attacks. So actually educating our clients into the fact that the biggest risk that they face at the moment is cyber attacks, and that it is the biggest insurable risk. So trying to talk to somebody who runs a huge factory in Byker and telling them that actually the policy they should be paying the most for is their cyber insurance doesn't sit right with them, and I think that is becoming more and more apparent, but it falls to me to try and sell that to someone who has already considers themselves to pay too much for insurance anyway.
Yeah. Do people look at it as kind of an unnecessary cost in essence? So it's unnecessary until they actually need it, and then they realise what they're actually paying the service for.
It's like any service, you're only paying a huge amount of money for a piece of paper, and so yes, our customers are delighted with the claim service that they get from us. They're not always delighted with the claim service they get from the insurance companies, but that's where we come in to try and buffer that. But essentially they haven't got something, a product. Sometimes they might have something that will help them go out to tender and help them to win more business, but they don't get anything for it. They get an envelope with a pack of paper in, and it's not really good value for money all the time.
Sounds exactly the same as what us. What we do in essence, what we give them is a tax bill. So we're not be the villains in fairness. There's nothing tangible, so compliance is certainly not valued by anybody in that instance. What other major challenges do you kind of see in the insurance industry, but also other industries coming as well? Do you foresee any big challenges? I mean, obviously, for yours might be things like Go Compare. Why would someone who can use Go Compare, or why should they be using a broker? I know the answer, but for everybody else, what would be the reason? So
affordability is definitely without doubt a challenge for everybody at the moment, particularly in the retail space. And if we rewind the clocks on our business 30 years, we were very much a personal lines insurance broker. So before these policies and products became available on the internet, before the emergence of Direct Line and that kind of thing, that was a big challenge. It's weirdly coming back in full circle now. That difference in price is reduced massively. And actually what we've always said is you're buying advice from us. So if a meerkat is going to give you the right advice and tell you stories about how things can go wrong, then fine, but generally speaking it isn't. So I think commoditising some personal lines policies is absolutely fine, and that's why we don't sell those policies as much as we used to. But in terms of business, why would you put all your energy and hard-earned cash into a business to then not protect it in the way that you should?
I think you've hit the nail on the head massively there with one phrase of, if a meerkat can do the business, then fair enough. Advisory, what we provide in terms of similar industries, is huge, and it's not a case of people have to value what they're actually the advice that you're given as well. And it's only when something goes wrong that we kind of stand up and say, well, actually, we kind of either told you or we've helped you out. And these AI or whatever it's going to be is never ever going to be able to achieve that.
No.
Because you're not going to make a new Karen Weir through AI or a new accountant or a new whatever it's going to be. You've still got to have that human touch who's come from experience, being informed, qualified. AI can do quite a lot, and it can probably do a lot of the administration tasks for you, and probably do better than what we can personally. But that's not the service that needs to be provided.
I agree.
So I completely agree with that. Yeah, and that's the reason. That would be the answer I would give you on why have an insurance broker, why have anyone to try and help you along.
Give you some advice.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So I don't see personally. I don't see the challenges of AI, go compare, anything like that actually being a major challenge. I think we can use it very well, and there's a market for it, certainly is, but that's not your market that we're after in similar realms. So yeah, I get that, I completely get that.
It feels like it's come a full circle for us. There was a time where people would gladly take advice and buy their insurance from the internet, but as customers become more sophisticated, and we sell through stories, don't we? So as they hear of instances and as people experience claims, or they know somebody who's experienced a claim, because at the end of the day that's what they're buying from us, is that service that they'll get when they have a claim or a problem. Yeah. We're finding that people are really wanting to come back to a broker, so much so that particularly in the personal line space, we're actively telling some of our customers to try and go online, because we don't feel that some of the products we're selling for car insurance or home insurance offer good value to customers. We feel like there are other products they could do without us, and that they are more than capable of administering themselves. So it feels really counterintuitive, and I think my in-laws would be horrified by some of the conversations we're having with long-standing customers. But we're now in a position where we're saying, look, you don't need advice on buying a car insurance, but you do if you set up a business. So don't even think about doing that without a broker.
Again, something you just mentioned there is coming back to brokers. People are starting, so if you think of like bigger business, I'm going to pick on the banks for example. If you were with a mainstream bank, you don't have a bank manager anymore. There's no one to speak to, there's no one to help or anything. But there's other companies who are progressive coming back into the way they do have a bank manager. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Handelsbank and Alligator Bank, where they do have a bank manager, and it's having that relationship. So in the modern day, relationships seem to have just disappeared into the ether of internet and whatever, and it's all faceless, and that's not what people want. I think people want to go back to the face meetings or having a chat, someone they can touch, speak to, see, and get advice from.
100%, and we build that model internally. That's the conversations that we have. We say, look, we want to be the old-fashioned bank manager. Not always an anecdote that resonates with some of our apprentices, but we try to explain to them that they've got somebody there that they can go to. So if someone sets up in business, they can come to us and say, right, what should I be thinking about insurance? What should I not be thinking about? And then as they build that business, or as they change that business, they can just have conversations with us about what they should then be thinking about in terms of protecting themselves against. Because you know, other than employer's liability and third-party motor, there's no mandatory UK legal insurance requirement. So everything else is just good business sense.
Yeah.
If you've got employees, the health and safety executives say you have to have employees' liability, and if you want to drive on a public highway, you need to have third-party motive, but no other insurance is a legal requirement.
Okay.
Be mad not to do it.
Yeah.
But that is, that's the way things are at the moment. So we can talk to customers about, let's look at affordability, let's look at what you need. And we've just had a very large customer last month who paid us a significant amount of money, and they have decided to self-insure. And they understood the risks of that, they know what that entails, and they've made that decision. And they'll still keep in touch.
Yeah.
They're no longer buying a policy from us, but they're still part of the Weir Insurance family, and any advice that they need, and if anything changes, we're still there for them.
Good, yeah. That's how you build a strong network brand and keep relationships, isn't it? Right, 2 seconds. So, going back to kind of, because you said you've been in business for how long now, did you say?
53 years coming up. 52 years.
You're not that old. The company maybe, but you're nowhere near that old.
I've been doing insurance for 35 years.
Right, okay. Well, you're looking good for it. That's because it must be wearing you well. So, going back through your kind of lifespan of business, but probably in the last, say, 10 to 15 years, is there a specific challenge that you thought, how are we going to overcome that? Can you share that, what you did to overcome it, and what the outcome was?
Most recent challenges have been around regulation.
Yes.
So the Financial Services Authority, as was, and now the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, were the body that, or are the body that regulate us, and very much it's a disproportionate amount of regulation. It started in 2005, and we were there for that first day, January the 1st, 2005, which we started. One of the things that we did to prepare, because if you think back to that time, 20 years ago, my husband and I were taking over the running of the business. So up until that point, we'd been involved in it for a few years, but I'd been busy having children and setting up finance companies. But as we were about to imminently take over a business into a regulated industry, which would be unrecognisable to most brokers who've done this for decades, we decided to do you remember the old Investors and People?
I do, yeah. I remember the sign. It was
IIP.
Yeah, I do actually.
So we decided to opt to go through that kite mark in anticipation of what regulation might look like, and also as a way of learning how to run a business, I suppose, because for us, we'd been involved in running a business, but we'd not actually run it ourselves. So that was a great grounding for us. We went through the Investors and People, we got that kite mark, and then we went through FCA regulation. Lots of our competitors in the local area couldn't do the same thing, only because they'd done it for so long, a bit like my father-in-law had decided that actually this isn't for them anymore. Yeah. It was more about regulation than doing the client stuff. So we bought a couple of competitors along the way, so we kind of merged in another couple of businesses.
So you've got growth by acquisition as well?
Yeah, so really I think Duncan and I bought the business from his parents, then bought one in the next town along, and then bought one in the next town along the other way, and kind of made that sort of mini empire, if you will, ours.
And by doing an acquisition, what do you think it got you? What was the thought pattern and reasoning behind it?
It was an opportunity. We didn't have a clue. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. The opportunity presented itself, and as we were kind of going through that transition anyway of regulation and starting to run a business, and we'd just been through this Investors and People, we decided that why not?
Yeah.
We'll do that. I remember we were so naive at the time. We bought a business, we tupied the staff there, some of whom still work for us to this day, and we, on the second acquisition we made, on the first day we started, there was a Margaret that turned up that we didn't even know was part of the business we bought.
Bonus Margaret.
Yeah, there was a Margaret we knew wasn't coming on board because she was part of the financial services arm of that business, which we weren't taking on, but there was a Margaret that we didn't know, and Margaret was amazing. She was absolutely phenomenal,
So
She
definitely
knew
a
all
bonus
of the
marketing.
customers. She knew
Yeah.
all of the customers. She could data cleanse without looking at a file because she knew everybody.
Yeah.
But she was our bonus Margaret, yeah.
Yeah. Good.
So,
And if you were going to do it again, would you, or if you are going to acquire, would you look for growth via acquisition or organic growth, which would be your preference at the minute?
we'd be open to both. In our industry, there's some very there's a lot of acquisition happening through investment from overseas.
Yeah.
So there's some very, very deep pockets at the moment. Now, competing with those deep pockets does somewhat limit what we can do unless we were to do it with one of those investors, and that's something we're not considering. We're very proud of our independence. Lots of our competitors have gone and are no longer independent. So yes, we would certainly consider acquisition. I'd love to do an acquisition with a business that is exactly the same culture and fit as ours, so that we could cover more of the northeast. That would be a real dream project to do. On the face of it, those kind of acquisitions, we may not be as attractive in terms of buying it, but you have to look at these things in the long run. You have to look at whether or not customers are going to stay and if you're going to get value from any sale. So that would be a bit of a dream, to bring some more people on board.
Do you tend to find it's the aging practitioner who's selling on, or is the young ones actually being attracted into the bright lights, shall we say?
I think there's a bit of both. We don't have enough competition in our industry.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. There's a huge barrier to entry at the moment, predominantly, in my opinion, caused through regulation. So actually getting into the industry, there's real problems, and I don't think that's healthy. I think at the moment, if you are looking for a good insurance broker, if one of the things you want is somebody who's independent and can choose the products and services and give you the advice they feel is right for you, then you've got to look a long way, because a lot of the brokers, particularly in the northeast, are part of larger chains. They're not independent.
So speaking on the acquisition side of things, if you did want to go down that route again, what would you do differently?
Oh, there's a lot I would do differently, and I think most of it is around how we would structure the deal, the finance side of it. I think in terms of the bringing customers and colleagues into the fold, I'd do it exactly the same way. I don't think there's very much we would change. We had a very strong culture in the business, and we embraced everybody in there. We looked at what their role would be as part of the new business, and we always see it as a merger rather than an acquisition. I don't like to see it as anything other than a coming together of people in the same industry, but I think I would take more advice on the structuring of the deals.
Yeah. What about doing the due diligence? Would you do anything different into that to make sure it's the right fit?
Do you know, I don't think I would. I think we know the landscape, and unless it was out of the area, then we might do it then. But I think probably like your industry, it's quite an incestuous industry. I've been part of the Insurance Institute for Newcastle upon Tyne Council for years. I was president in 2008, 2009. And so there's pretty much the same names come up, and we know who people are and what they do. So I think on a financial side, but on a gut instinct, probably not. I'm a people person, and I like to work with people I like to work with.
Good. You mentioned something before as well about coaching as well. I think you would take advice. Do you have a business coach that you work with? Yeah, and do you recommend, I'm not going to ask you the person, but do you recommend, and what do they technically bring? Because people suggest that if you're a business owner, it's kind of, it's all on you. Yeah. But you also, as a business owner, need that accountability that you can turn to and discuss, because we don't have all the answers. It's impossible.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've kept, a legacy of the Investors and People journey way back in 2001, is monthly one-to-ones. So across the business, everybody in the organisation, if it's not monthly, it's maybe 6 or 8 a year, has a one-to-one to discuss progress against targets, to discuss their contribution, their training needs, how they want to grow, and just generally well-being, anything about how they feel. And that might be 15 minutes, it might be 20 minutes. And we tend to do that throughout the organisation in a kind of hierarchical fashion, which you would expect.
Yeah.
But quite rightly, when you get to the top of the organisation, I always felt really, really deprived that nobody was there to do one-to-ones with me.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that about 10 years ago, before I started with Official Business Mentors, I would get the least senior person in the office to do it.
Oh, right, okay.
So I would ask them to do my one-to-one, and I'd give them the question set, but I'd say just hold me accountable, hold my feet to the fire, and we used to have a saying where we'd say, look, I need feedback, but stab me in the front. I need to know what I'm doing, but I need it in the front. And so I would do it that way, which was good for an accountability and a little bit of bonding and a bit of vulnerability. But I quickly decided that I needed somebody who knew what they were talking about. So I joined peer groups, I joined Vistage, and that was great whilst I did that, which involved a mentor and also monthly meetings with completely different businesses where we all got together and talked about issues. And I've kind of continued that in some shape or form ever since. Then
more like self-development as well.
Yeah, and then also networking in terms of BNI, which is where I met you, Andrew. So something like BNI holds me accountable to other people, makes sure that I am still providing what I think my customers and potential customers would like.
So the customer experience, and we'll talk about customer experience. Do you kind of try to monitor the customer experience and try to improve the customer experience? At the end of the day, you're selling insurance, we're selling tax, in essence, so the customer experience is never going to be the greatest at it, but it can be as good as it can possibly be. Do you kind of value that, and how do you value it, how do you emphasise that, and how do you get your team to build into that?
So we've done what we call cuddle calls for, probably we started that again as part of the investors and people process, so we started that in the early 2000s. We used to do it after a claim. So if a client had a claim, we would ask them what the experience was like. Was it as they expected it to be? What could we have done differently? And remember, as an insurance broker, we simply give a customer, we match them with an insurance company and a product that we feel will perform when they need it to. So lots of brokers don't get involved in the claims process. We always stick our nose in as far as we can possibly get it, so that we can represent the client at all times, and we just make sure that the client's not getting bullied into something. So one of the ways we did that was every time there was a claim, we just give the client a call, do a bit of a cuddle call, make sure things went the way they want. That formalised over the years to an NPS call, and so we've been measuring and monitoring our own net promoter scores since probably, I'd say we've been doing that for 6 or 7 years. So we've been doing that at each stage of the customer journey. The FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, finally caught up with us, and last summer they made consumer duty part of the rules for insurance. And so now one of the things that we have to do is to measure that customer journey, whether it's just through anecdotal telephone conversations, whether it's through looking at complaints, whether it's looking at repudiated claims. So we look at claims that were made and then were withdrawn to see if actually we maybe sold somebody something they weren't expecting, didn't understand. So we look at all those statistics, but in terms of finding out what the customer experience was like, we've kind of been doing it for a long time. And it's great storytelling. So lots of the anecdotal stuff that people will tell us, those words and phrases that they use, we'll stick that onto Facebook. So,
and with that, how do you structure internally? So let's say we are a client of Weir Insurance, but if we were coming on board, do we get allocated a client manager? Do they look after all the insurance? So then that client manager can look after the client, get to know them, understand them, and things like that.
Yeah, we'll always give you one point of contact. So you've got your bank manager, if you will, and that bank manager will always be there to signpost, and you'll have the mobile number and for that person. But what we do like to do is trying to bring some of our team into your address book as well, because we're not a massive organisation. There's 18 of us, and that includes our in-house funding company. So if you pay by instalments, direct debit, whether it's weekly or monthly, I want you to know Catherine, because she's going to be your best friend if you've got cash flow issues. So we make sure that you know who she is, that you've got a direct number for her, and that you've got her email address. And also my claims ninja, Kim, she heads up our claims team, and she is just phenomenal. So she's 24/7.
Yeah.
She's got a claims phone, and if something happens, if you get involved, God forbid, in an accident on the Team Valley, on the A1 at the Team Valley on Christmas Eve at 11 o'clock at night, you can ring Kim, and she will basically signpost you on what to do and help you take witness statements and things like that, and make sure you get the right outcome. So there are a couple of key individuals I would always want you to know. But if you just want to deal with the same person, if you just want to deal with me, that's absolutely fine.
Do you try and introduce Kim and the other person kind of from day one?
We try to, yeah. We will always try to make sure you know what the 24-hour number is. We'll try and introduce the team as much as we can. So it's that fine balance between having one point of contact and not being a call centre. Yeah.
And it's that customer experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you out from the outset detail this is the process, the customer will have the experience and getting to know and speak to people. Yeah, I get that. Thinking about kind of the business journey as well, has there been a significant pivotal moment that you thought, oh, it's make or break, or it's kick you into the next level?
I think there's possibly been a couple of things. When regulation came into force, that was a big make or break for a lot of people in our industry. For us, it was a great opportunity because we were excited, we were hungry, we were ready to go.
Did you find people fell off because they didn't want to be regulated, or?
Not so much fell off, but there are still some out there who I think probably shouldn't be.
Okay.
I mean, in my opinion, regulation of insurance brokers is disproportionate, and we probably do more than we need to. We won Compliance Broker of the Year in 2020 as awarded by the Broker Network. We didn't apply for it, we were just given that title.
The best type of awards.
Exactly, and I was a bit aggrieved though because we were in lockdown and I didn't get to buy a new dress and go to the party. I had to receive it in my dining room at home on my own, so I was screaming at the screen on my own. But I think we probably do too much compliance. There's still people out there that are not doing enough, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But huge changes like consumer duty, we just pivoted and we just changed the name on some of our reports that we were already doing. So that's been great for us. And I think probably in more recent years, this influx of mergers and acquisitions across insurance brokers, that could have been a time for us to say, is it time to sell up and go, particularly with the amount of money being offered from some of the American investors that were coming in. So in recent years, we were courting daily calls from people wanting to buy the business.
Okay.
And it was never a consideration. We're having way too much fun at this to do it, to sell out and do that. But I think that's probably made us stronger because it's made us more focused on what we do want to do. We know that we don't want to sell out, but what do we want to do, and to sort of plan for the next 5-10 years.
Okay, that leads us nicely into the kind of the next segment of this, really. Building cultures, mantras, ethos, work-life balance that we want to kind of discuss. And basically what success looks like. But if we had a Weir Insurance mantra or motto, what would it be?
We live by some core values that we really try to do everything by. So recruitment, choices every day, and then mine, I suppose. So our 3 core values are bravery. So every single day, feel the fear and do it anyway. So I don't so much talk about stepping outside of comfort zones. For us, it's more about stretching that comfort zone so it becomes a bit bigger. So we don't really step outside of it, we just make it bigger.
Can you give an example of what bravery in the insurance field would look like?
Not selling up our business was definitely a brave move, because that could have been quite a lucrative decision, and we absolutely do not want to do that. I think every single day we'll try and do something micro brave or hugely brave. I was asked to join the main board at the British Insurance Brokers Association. That was scary. There's 1,800 insurance brokers that look like me,
it's and fantastic honour.
It's my voice that represents them in the trade body and to government and to the regulator. So that was quite brave, but I did feel like it was something I should do. So each day we say yes to something. Doing this podcast That's stretching the comfort zone. And we're trying to instill that across everyone. The other thing I think that we do genuinely live by, this has been a really hard thing to do, which sounds weird, but one of our core values is kindness. And we've worked a lot on kindness over the years. So we used to work in an office together and say, look, we'll treat people how we would want to be treated.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think that's a bit narcissistic. I think you should actually treat people the way they want to be treated.
Yeah, customer experience.
Yeah, and particularly with the neurodiversity that is so when you start understanding neurodiversity, you see it everywhere. You see it in everybody you know, and you see it everywhere. And being kind to people who just might not be seeing the world the way you are, so that is something that we really, really instill every day. That's a bit of a mantra. And one thing we're really trying to push at the moment, and this is where I feel like the world's biggest nag, is efficiency. So I will constantly get my team to use OneNote, for example, and they just call me the biggest nag in the world. But we look to try and find efficiencies, being kind at all times, and every day just doing something that gives you
your life is a OneNote, isn't it, now that you've
absolutely.
got to grips with it?
Absolutely,
You showed us that today, and I agree as well.
If it's not a OneNote, it doesn't happen.
That's right, yeah. Do you want to explain about kind of what you do and how you set it up and how you kind of differentiate between personal and business using OneNote?
Yes, I don't think the word is balance for me, work-life balance, and I don't really think that is the case for many business owners or for many people these days. Certainly the next generation have taught us that it isn't about a work-life balance, it's more of a work-life blend, if you will. So for me, there is definite distinctions between where you switch off from work and where it becomes something for you. But
do you ever switch off as a business owner?
I think you have to lead by example. So doing 12-hour days would not be something I would condone at work unless it was a hobby and a passion at the same time. But I also don't think it's the same for everyone. Some people want to work slowly and long, and then at other times when different priorities happen in their life, they have to work quick and for over a shorter time. It's a little bit like staff perks. I have a bit of an issue with let's get a beer fridge, because that only works for those people who
drink beer,
want a beer fridge on a Friday afternoon. I think that what makes somebody enjoy work is very personal to them. So it's about listening to them and saying what would make your life easier. And if that is flexible working, fine. If that's some consistency, because everything else in their life is chaos, then consistency is what we need to give them. So I don't think one size fits all. We've done quite a lot of work internally about this in terms of what do we do that my colleagues like, what do we not do that they would like, and what do we not yet do that they would like us to start doing. And it was quite interesting that it's not all about can we have our birthday off in beer fridges? Yes, that is to some people, but actually, I worked with a guy who'd never had a birthday cake because he was a carer for disabled parents. And he loved coming to work on his birthday because he got cake.
And share this, I get that. So, do you get regular feedback from your team members as well about
Is it
a big thing at Weir ensuring it form part of the culture, which we'll come on to in the next part. But do you get regular feedback, regular meetings, regular one-to-ones, and what changes can be implemented? There's the model in Denmark, and they're starting to come with this country where they do the 4-day working week.
Yes.
Is that something that you potentially would implement, or how would it work in the insurance world?
I mean, we have to make sure that whatever we do is commercially viable, that it doesn't damage the business. And one of the things that I've always done, somebody once told me that if you see your business as an entity, as an individual, so see the business as an entity in itself, whatever we do for the business has to be right for that entity. So whatever decision we make always has to be right for the business, even if it's not right for some of the individuals in it. So if my colleagues all said I only want to work 4 days, as long as it was right for the business, absolutely,
Yeah.
I'd consider it. We do have a fair bit of flexible working at the moment, so we have some people who work from home when they need to, and because of family commitments or just because actually they're more productive at home. And then we have some that would not work from home. If I persuaded them to, they just don't want to. So I think it's very much around what works for them, but it always has to be right for the business. And we've made every decision. There's nobody more important than the business, me included. So whatever decision we make, we've always said, look, is this going to harm the business? Because if it does, that's not going to be good news for any of us. But if it doesn't harm the business, then yeah, okay, let's try it.
And does that kind of breed into culture? So when we talk about the word culture, it's kind of culture. You can't just write down a culture and say we're going to abide by it. Culture has to be built.
Yes.
When we're talking about culture, what would you envisage, or what would you like Weir Insurance to be viewed as having that culture, and how do you then build it, develop it, and then maintain it?
So we very much work around. Everybody I work with is a superhero, and everyone has a little bit of a superhero persona and a character that they have, a little avatar, and that.
Anyone wear a cape?
Capes. Have you ever watched
On
The
a Friday?
Incredibles? So when somebody comes into our organisation, part of the onboarding process is we will talk to them about what their superpower is. So we don't talk to them about skills, knowledges and behaviours. We'll just say, look, if we asked your significant other or kids, what would they say your superpower would be? And usually within about 3-4 weeks of being part of our organisation, that starts to come out. And we kind of celebrate that superpower. So it's about the fact that together we are stronger, and which sounds a bit cheesy, but we try to think of ourselves as a whole utility belt, and we bring out the skill that we need, which might not be part of that person's job, but actually we need a bit of Laura right now to do this particular task.
Yeah.
And that is something that we make sure we talk about a lot. We have a hero nomination, heroes and villains nominations. So we are very upfront about who has gone above and beyond and who has actually hacked us off. Part of regulation says we have to have a complaints log. We have a grumble log as well.
Okay.
Which is just somebody whinging about something. But we'll look at them every week and say, was that someone having a bad day, or actually, have they got a point?
Or could we have done better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
And then we'll kind of look at it and say, that's not a complaint, but if that happens a couple of times, it might turn into one, so we'll try and nip things in the bud. So we try to, each week we have a team meeting on a Monday morning, and we try to celebrate the heroes, highlight the grumbles and the villains in a good way. Stab me in the front. Let's talk about what we could have done better.
It's massively important, because no business in the world, I don't care whether you're a one-man joiner to a multinational company, goes through business without anything going wrong or any issues. It's impossible. So I think that's one thing that doesn't get kind of talked about as much. Everyone talks about the success stories, how well we're doing, but to overcome and generate success, you've got to overcome obstacles, learn from it and grow.
Nobody learned anything through being successful.
Exactly right. So I'm massive on that with the grumble log.
Yeah, we have a grumble log, and anything on that grumble log or the complaints log, we're encouraged by our regulators to look at a root cause analysis anyway. So a lot of insurance brokers might see that as just another bit of compliance. We really embrace it and go, look, what could we have done? And you know, if you do it with humour and you do it with good communication, there's no finger pointing in our organisation. Where we would finger point would be unkindness.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't tolerate unkindness, but people making a mistake. Yeah, absolutely.
But customer service is I completely agree that it's key. So we talked about kind of very vaguely there, the work-life blend is what you call it. As a business owner, busy business owner, I know you're into your yoga and Pilates and other activities as well. How do you technically find time to and have 3 kids? I appreciate that. I think that at home now there's none at home.
One is doing his A-levels today, as we speak.
Is he really? Fingers crossed.
Geography A-level.
Alright, fingers crossed he's done well. How do you find motherhood, being a wife? I know you've got animals as well. Running a couple of businesses, having your own thing. A work-life balance and blend still has to be John, how do you achieve that?
One note, obviously.
Of course, yes, one note. Yeah, if it's diarised, it's in.
Yeah, I think it's quite an intentional choreography. So, and if I'm honest, it was probably choreographed during COVID. A lot of us did soul searching during that time because we had time on our hands that we hadn't had before. So I really sat down and said, what is it that I enjoy? What is it that I don't enjoy? What do I need? What feeds the soul? What doesn't? So it was quite intentionally choreographed. I use a piece of software from Pete Wilkinson, the Reclaro software, 135 action plan, and I actually have a business plan on me every year.
Okay, yeah.
So I look at what I want to do for the year in terms of me, and then I section it off into three aspects of mind, how I want to improve my mind, body, so what do I want to do physically, and then soul, what actually makes my soul sing, all those kind of spiritual.
When do you write that? Is it on the 1st of January? Is it the
Usually the 1st of November. So it's a living document, and it grows over time, and generally, so I might start the year with one of the things on my Enrich My Mind might be a reading list, and there might be 40 books on that reading list for the year, and then they will get added to as time goes on, as I get recommendations.
This is your accountability list, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'll then, it's very intentional and it's very choreographed, and it's not sexy at all. I don't just wake up one morning and have an epiphany on how I want it to do it. It's quite intentional. Involves quite a few spreadsheets, but that's just how my brain goes.
So on the flip side of that as well, on following on, you set goals for yourself.
Yes.
But do you also set business goals?
Yes.
How often? When do you set them? How do you monitor it? What do you do to kind of keep people engaged in them as well?
Exactly the same. I do it through this 135 action plan. It's an annual target of where we want to be, and we set it up. We have a vision for the business, and then we kind of look at three aspects of that. So what do we want the customer to experience? Financially, what do we want? So what do we want the business to look like at the end of it financially?
Which is massively important, because without finance, we're nowhere.
Yeah, and then we look at human resources. So are we resourced up in terms of people? Are people on the right bus? Do they know where they want to go? Are they working for in the right direction? Are they aligned? And everybody has their own set of targets which fall out from that main target. And again, we will set that together in about October, November in our AGM. We set it for the following year.
And how often do you monitor it as well? And do you have kind of regular feedback sessions on them and how things are going against them? Yeah. So
we'll do a calendar month. Most of our numbers will be calendar months, which will that'll get you excited, I guess. That's the kind of thing. So we'll look at the numbers on a calendar month, and then we do just check-ins. We'll do one of the things that's been a real learning curve for me is how do you measure mental well-being or mental ill health, if you like. And I didn't have a clue. I knew it was important. It felt important. People said it was important. Didn't have a clue. I became a mental health first aider, so I was accredited with that, but didn't really know what I was doing. And then COVID kind of came. It was a blessing in a lot of ways, because I was given permission to start probing my colleagues with an email every week saying, out of 10, how do you feel?
Okay.
And that kind of questioning would not have been the norm before that.
Yeah.
And we've just kept it going. So we literally every week I'd say, work-wise, because everyone was working from home, how are you doing out of 10, where 10's brilliant and 1 isn't. And I'd get something back with a bit of narrative that might highlight the need some help, or the phone wasn't working, or they were having some issues with prints, things like that. And then we'd ask the same question on the mental health. And the things that people opened up to, and the feedback I got was they felt better just by verbalising it, because, remembering that we can be brilliant employers, but we're not the only employer in the household. The spouse or partner or significant other or kid's employer is also there, and if they are not as understanding and don't value that mental well-being as much as we do, then it affects my colleagues, So, you know, I can remember having a conversation by email with one of the girls who said, I'm really struggling today. And I said, right, take the day off.
Yeah.
We'll switch you off, just don't do it. And when I asked her why she felt bad, it was because her husband's employer was basically threatening to sack them.
Ah, okay.
So there's
family
nothing
stress.
I could have done.
Yeah, family stress.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the mental health well-being and monitoring, and you can then send regular emails. It leads on to kind of not a work-life balance, but a setup within the business.
Mm-hmm.
Are you kind of frontline? So do you have your own client base, or do you look after the team more and then the running of the business? So the term working on as opposed to working in the business. Are you predominantly working on the business?
I'm a cost centre.
Right.
I'm definitely a cost centre. I don't bring in any direct revenue. So yes, I work on the business, but I also take up the cost functions. So all of the regulation, the HR, finance, overall finance. So all of those unsexy stuff as well.
Yeah, has to be done.
Well, it's a great model because lots of people in our industry have an issue with their top fee earner also wanting to run the business, and that doesn't always work.
No, definitely. So there'll have been a point though. You've read the E-Myth, haven't you? The manager, technician, and what have you. So there'll have been a point when you were doing it when you started off, doing pretty much everything. So you will have been client facing, you will have been doing this and this and this. But that takes you away from then being able to run the business.
Yeah.
And it does cause issues because you can't be all things to all men. At what point do you think, I have to change this now and I have to work on the business, A, to look after the team members that you've got, to B, make sure the customers are getting the best experience, and C, 3, what about everything's going well?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest grounding things for me was becoming a mother. So I remember saying, oh, I can do this. I can absolutely do this and have children because I shall bring my baby into the office in a bassinet and it shall lie quietly in the corner while I continue to run the empire. And I remember coming in to work with my first child running payroll with a TENS machine on because I was having contractions. Little did I know they weren't contractions at all, and I didn't have a clue what was coming. So despite thinking I was going to be invincible, I had 3 children in 5 years, and I just learned that actually the business survives quite nicely without me. And that led into, I still got involved in the business and I still did a lot of the working on the business, but the client stuff perhaps was the bit where I would have neglected customers. So that was an opportune and grounding moment to say, look, this is a role that requires somebody who can give time to it. And it was a great relief to my colleagues because they would love to do the client stuff, but didn't want to have to worry about when the light bulb needs changing or the printers are up for renewal or whatever. So all of that stuff comes to me. They get to do all the client stuff. And if they want to work on any strategy, we've got 4 directors in the business now, myself and my husband, and we brought 2 other directors on board last year. And if they want to get involved in the strategy and that kind of stuff, they can do it as much or as little as they want.
I think one thing about kind of business owners and people who started off in business and start generating through, it's they think they've got to do everything themselves, but it comes to a point when you physically can't. You've got to recruit, you've got to outsource, you've got to do whatever you can do, and then you have to then provide the right service by making sure that you work on your business. Do you have any kind of what we call business development days within that you set aside yourself, or does it all fall into business development?
I struggle with being creative and strategic at set times.
Okay.
It's a constant struggle. I think it's the neurodivergence in me.
Do you think you're neurodivergent?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. And I think everybody would.
Exactly the same.
I think anybody, Once upon a time it was called driven and motivated. Now I think we acknowledge it as being slightly different neurologically than the norm.
Yeah.
But actually I embrace it. I think it's great, and I love people who also embrace it as well. But I do struggle. One of the things I really struggle with is to be creative and strategic at set times.
Yeah.
So I have a constant battle between wanting my week to be completely scheduled, but then wanting it to be impromptu as well.
Do you find yourself sending WhatsApp messages to the team at random times with, we need to do this, we need to do that? That's the guys will tell you exactly the same on my side of things.
Well, Sending an email and then using the delay delivery function on it is great.
Ah, okay.
So I send emails at 4 o'clock in the morning with a delayed delivery of 9 o'clock or half past 8, because I know that some people will check them.
Because you're an early bird, aren't you? You're up at
5 o'clock every day since the beginning of COVID.
And what do you do at that period of time? So from 5 till 9, is that your time to reflect, chill out, or do you do work at that point as well?
I do a bit of everything really. So my dogs are my saviour. I mean, they're not very mobile. One's old and one's disabled, so we don't walk very far. Yeah. But we do get outside and sniff the clouds every morning before 6:30. So they like to go and have a mooch, and I do the same thing, sniff the air a bit. And that's every day. So we do that every single day. And I will do things like check my OneNote, check emails. So I do have quite a structure to the day, but that's my grounding. Mm-hmm. If I don't have that structure, I don't feel like I can free up some headspace to do that whole strategic stuff. So there is a bit of time where I'll carve out some time to think about the business, but if it doesn't come, I don't worry about it.
Yeah, okay.
I used to often say, Friday afternoons I'm going to think about what we'll do next year. Mm. And then Friday afternoon I'd have a complete and utter creativity drought and it wouldn't happen. Yeah. But equally I might be walking the dogs and think, why didn't I bring a paper and pen with me? I need to write that down. Yeah. So I've learned
your phone, I suppose, just speaking to that and then noting it up. Yeah.
Yeah. I've learned to relax more and let it come when it does.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to come on to something with success. And how you value it, because valuation of success is completely different to every individual person, and everyone's success is different, and rightly so, and everyone's is right for them. In your eyes, how do you value success, both family, wealth, business, across the board?
It's got to be health first for me. Money's never been my god. That said, I've had times where I haven't had any and that wasn't pleasant. Yeah. So I do think a base level of income is absolutely important. But for me it has to be health first and foremost. So as long as I can still attend my reformer Pilates classes 4 or 5 times a week, and I can walk reasonable distance of 10,000 steps a day without being in pain, then I believe that's another day that I can chalk up to success. As well, cognitive, as long as I don't get frustrated and angry too many times, that kind of sense of calm, I think that's success. Also, I think being financially stable enough to allow my children to follow their dreams and what they want to do, that's success to me. And similarly with my colleagues, being able to have a business which is commercially viable, to not to be a sweat house, to be somewhere that they enjoy coming to work, that's success.
And maybe provide for their families as well, so that you're helping them provide, it's a level of success.
I think so. For me it's never been about money. I'm not a materialistic person, never have been. But I do understand what not having it looks like, and I probably wouldn't want to, my retirement dream is to run a kennel-free rescue and live feral in a caravan, so I'm not terribly materialistic.
Fair enough, yeah.
However, I think there is a level where you do need some kind of security.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we could talk about insurance, I suppose, where you could until the cows come home, but it's much more getting to know you and then learning about how you do your business, and that's kind of the angle that I was going on for this chat. Mm-hmm. Because you run a team of 18, I think you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. That's including me. So
but multiple officers, mm-hmm. In an industry that is non-sexy, like accountancy, or seem to be non-sexy, but doing it with a smile on your face, having a happy team, making profitability, which is key as well, having structure involved. That's the angle that I was kind of coming at, and I think this is why you've been an ideal guest to kind of come on here to try and put your experience and information out to someone who's going to go through a similar journey, because business is not just about kind of one person doing everything. It's impossible. We have to have them levels of people within the business to help us with all the different aspects, because as we grow through life, more things come up, more administration, more regulation, more scrutiny, more everything. and you've got to have a team with you.
Absolutely.
Do you have any kind of final, if you were starting off again, say 20 years, is there anything that you would tell yourself now?
Absolutely. I'd say to me, be much braver. Just do it. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Be much, much, much braver.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell every young person that right now. Don't be scared of making mistakes. In fact, that's the thing that you learn from. And remember to slow down.
Yeah, very important actually.
Yeah.
And what's Karen Weir's future goals?
Kennel-free rescue. I need to live
Living in a
with
caravan.
dogs. Yes.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make enough money to make sure that everybody is sorted and I can slip out the side door and go and live in a caravan with my feral dogs.
Fantastic. Well, Karen, thank you very much. It's been a
Thank
pleasure
you.
talking with you, and it'll not be the last time either. Thank you very much.
Thank you.